Okay, so here we are again with another podcast, which I promise will be very interesting for our guest today. We have Attorney Joe Musso. And Joe, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and read from the excerpt that's on your bio on the internet. 25 years of legal practice on behalf of advocating on behalf of nursing home and assisted living facility residents as a personal injury attorney. Joe is an officer in the DC Trial Lawyers Association and the past chair of the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association Long-Term Care Litigation Group. He has lectured numerous times around the country and on how to how to prosecute nursing home abuse and neglect claims. He is admitted to practice law in Virginia, Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Welcome, Joe Musso. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have you.
Yes.
Have you on with us today. And of course, you know, our organization is all things advocating for nursing facility victims, residents of abuse and neglect, and the families that need the support and guidance through that journey, because it also directly affects the family in a very serious way. Myself, matter of fact, each of us have been directly affected by that. Myself having lost my mom to abuse and neglect, and Tracy lost her dad to abuse and neglect. Carolyn has had her brother face the same situation in a nursing facility. Laurel comes with a wealth of knowledge because Laurel worked in the nursing facility area for many years, and many years. She also has, you know, she knows and has seen a lot as well. Tracy is a 30-year nursing assistant working in the nursing facility. So we kind of know the walk when it comes to what families are experiencing and the things that we've seen. That side of it, and then also trying to get justice for the injustice, trying to get accountability. And that's where your profession as an attorney comes in, because we depend, and families depend so much on, you know, having the ability to go to an attorney and then getting the support for the injustice. So
that's a really tough thing for a lot of families. I mean, I'm sure you ladies know how hard it is to find an attorney to take a nursing home case.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of reasons for that I can share with you. I mean, I'll give you a little snapshot into it, but you know, if you bring I always kind of talk about this in terms of other vulnerable populations. I mean, I don't think there's any population as vulnerable as the one that you folks are trying to protect, the one I'm trying to protect. And you might say, well, what about, you know, children or the unborn? Well, I don't know about you, but it looks like the unborn has a pretty loud voice out there.
Exactly. Right.
You know, and I can tell you this, if you showed up at your kid's daycare center and you went to pick up your child and they were missing a tooth, had a black eye, and the person came out and said, I don't know what happened. You'd be on the front page of the newspaper by tomorrow morning.
Correct.
Every lawyer in the Commonwealth of Virginia would want to sign you up. They'd be sending people to your house with a retainer agreement to sign.
We know that, yeah.
If you went and picked up your dog at a doggy daycare center and they were limping and no one could tell you why,
yes, sir,
you'd get more attention than if your 90-year-old mother had the same exact problem.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head.
What we know. Yes.
If you go to plaintiff's lawyers and you start going, well, I want justice because my mom was malnourished and she was dehydrated and she ended up with a bed sore and she fell 7 times and no one can tell me anything. You're going to run into, first of all, 95% of the lawyers have no idea how to even handle one of those cases because
Mhm.
nursing homes are the most regulated industry right under nuclear power plants. And if you don't know that complex regulatory scheme, you can't really handle one of these things. So first of all, it eliminates 95% of the lawyers off the bat.
Correct.
Of the 5% of lawyers that might think about handling a case like that, 3 or 4% of them, okay, out of that little narrow 5%, will look at it and say it's a personal injury case. And they'll immediately say this: how old were they? And when you say that they've lived past their actuarial life expectancy,
Mhm.
and
Right.
you find out that they didn't have wage loss, and you find out that they don't have lost earning capacity, and you go no young children dependents that they can put up big
Right.
economic numbers on. And oh, by the way, you're suing a medical facility in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's a medical malpractice case. It's going to be capped in the Commonwealth. And you're representing somebody who was so sick and frail and vulnerable before the thing you are suing about, that they required 24/7 care before the thing you're even complaining about. You knock out another 4% of that
Mhm.
last 5%, right?
Mhm.
And then you get to the lawyers like me. And me and the other lawyers who are nursing home abuse lawyers. I am a nursing home neglect and abuse lawyer. That is what I've been for 25 years. And we say you Google Joe Musso and nursing home, and you're going to see a quarter of a century of this. This is my life. But even this is the sad
So,
part. I turned down about 23 out of 25 people who come to me. And I can tell you, it's not because those other 23 don't have cases. It's because I'm limited in the number of cases I can pursue.
exactly.
They're very expensive to bring. And I work with a lot of firms. I'm of counsel to a firm called Williams Deloach down in Virginia Beach that is really dedicated to trying to protect the whole Commonwealth at this point, which is really wonderful. And it's an old friend of mine who owns it, Wayne Williams, who I went to high school with. So we got 30 years of history, and he brought me on as of counsel to try to really have an impact in this area. And part of that is his mom is in a facility. It's coming from the heart. I'm also of counsel to a national law firm called Bedsore Law that they're taking over the entire country as far as trying to hold these facilities accountable. But all of us can only take on so many. It's one of those practice areas where there's way more cases than there are lawyers. And so the great odds are, even if someone's been abused or neglected, and this is just terrible. I hate saying this, but this is the truth. And I think you ladies probably already know this.
Hmm.
Even if you're abused or neglected in a nursing home, the great likelihood is a lawyer is not going to represent your case. And that is terrible. I mean, I wish it was different. That's why I teach other lawyers how to do it. That's why a big part of my job is to try to teach family caregivers how to prevent it, how to spot it. Like I teach on empowered caregiving and empowered advocacy all the time. I mean, we can spend this whole podcast with me telling you the rules of advocacy that I'm sure you guys know, but a lot of your listeners might not. Because you want to try to prevent it up front.
Correct.
Then you
Yeah.
want to try to hold them accountable when there is negligence. And so I have to choose the cases I can take at any given time. I've got a network of other people that I know that do this, that I trust, that I can give to. But there are more cases than there are lawyers that are competent to do this work.
Let me ask you a question there, Joe. But when you look at the federal law and everything that's written under what is supposed to be the guideline and requirements for nursing facilities, why is it so difficult for attorneys to follow up on that or use that as their, I guess, their support, if you want to call it that? What makes it so hard?
Great question. It's a great question. It's the nature of everything you have to prove. Okay, so let's talk about the federal OBRA regulations that you're referencing, right? So 42 CFR 483. These are all the regulations that govern nursing homes. If you go to the interpretive guidance, which are the F tags, you can really see how each of these regulations is supposed to play out. So the regulation that says if you enter a nursing home without a pressure injury, you should not develop one unless your that pressure injury was clinically unavoidable. And the regulations define clinically unavoidable to
Right.
basically mean that the nursing home did everything it was supposed to do. It assessed correctly, it planned properly, it implemented the plan correctly, and it evaluated the effectiveness of the plan.
But didn't have proper staffing to take care of the person.
That ends
That's a
up
big
being
issue.
why, right? That ends up being why they didn't do one of those
Yeah.
assessment plan implementation evaluate. That's the hidden secret thing, the guy behind the curtain that makes the whole thing run is understaffing. But just Joanna, just because it's such a fair question, you look at the law and you go, not supposed to get a bed sore. Mom went in with clean skin. She comes out with a stage 4 bed sore and dies from an infected decubitus ulcer. Why are lawyers not jumping at that case? Why is that something that,
Right.
that I gotta maybe get turned down by 10 lawyers before I
Right.
find somebody to do it? And here's the answer. The answer is the other things you gotta prove. And that is in the Commonwealth of Virginia, like every other state pretty much, right? Those federal regulations are the standards that the nursing home is supposed to meet. That's what they're supposed to do. That's the basis for your lawsuit. You're saying you didn't turn and reposition the resident, you didn't feed and take care of the resident, you didn't change the resident's diapers in a timely manner. These are all things that you failed to do and you were supposed to do. The standard of care was not met by you. That's how you bring a nursing home case, right?
Mhm.
But that's only one prong. And I don't want to talk about the difficulty of proving that prong too. But there are 2 more prongs in Virginia before you can get any recovery. And the second one is that the person was injured or died as a direct result, as a proximate cause of that first deviation from the standard of care. Okay, so it's not enough to say the facility failed to do something. You have to prove that but for the facility failing to do something or doing something it should not have done, for example, that resident would not have had that result, that outcome. They would not have died when they died. They would not have developed the bed sore. They would have not have developed the malnutrition or the dehydration. And Joanna, what the defense is very good at, they've got excellent medical malpractice attorneys on retainer, signed up, fighting with each other to try to get the business of the nursing home industry. As you might imagine, being the lawyer for the nursing home can make you a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they are paid well, and they are exceptional attorneys. These are not, fly-by-night lawyers. These are the best and the brightest in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they make a lot of money defending that money for the nursing home because it's all part of their operation. Defending attacks from families and the lawyers who represent them is a big part of the profit model of that nursing home. You can't understaff your facility, allow a bunch of bed sores, falls, and problems to happen, and then not be prepared for the lawsuits when they come. It's all part of the whole business. Legal
Yeah.
is a big part of the business. And here's how you defend a nursing home case. You say, no, you can't prove that we didn't do the things that we were supposed to do because your resident is either dead or demented, and so is her roommate. And there's no witnesses to what we didn't do. And we wrote down in our little chart all the stuff that we allegedly did, that there's no way you did, but they document it. And now you got to prove your case using the defendant's employees. I'm one of the only lawyers in the world. I want you to imagine a situation where a red light, green light intersection car accident happens. And now I got to prove who ran the red light. And there's 4 people standing on the corner. And I go to the 4 people and I say, who ran the red light? And they all say, car B ran the red light. Well, I'm going to now take the depositions of those witnesses and I'm going to put them in front of the jury. And if I have the driver of car A and the driver of car B, and they both say, well, this one did it. Well, no, this one did it. But I got 4 independent witnesses who have no skin in the game whatsoever. Who are you going to believe? You're going to believe the 4
Right.
witnesses,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
In a nursing home case, not only do I not have the 4 witnesses, all I've got is the defendant's witnesses. My witness, the person it happened to, is usually either demented or dead. And so I've got no witnesses. I got to prove this case. I got to prove that the nursing home didn't do its job by getting the nurses and the aides to say they didn't do their job. It's incredibly difficult to do when you think about it that way, which is why I'll give you one of the biggest criteria for whether I'll take a case or not. Where are you visiting? I need a witness. I need someone to say, I was in there visiting mom for 4 hours, 5 hours that day, and nobody came in. And when I rang the bell, I couldn't find anyone. And when I went to the care plan conferences, it wasn't interdisciplinary. There was just one person there, and she had no idea about what was going on with mom. I need someone who's involved, or else I don't have anyone but the defendant themselves. And I can tell you this, and this is the tragic, sad thing about this. You ladies, I can tell just from knowing about your history, from doing the research on you, and now the fact that you're advocates for the podcast about nursing home abuse. My guess is you were probably significantly more involved in your loved one's care in that nursing home
Without a doubt.
than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanna, you said you lost your mom to
Yes.
abuse?
Mm-hmm.
And you were in there.
Yeah.
You knew about your mom. You were
And
asking questions. You were advocating on her behalf.
I was taking pictures. I was making
Pictures.
reports, putting memos, calling meetings. Yeah.
Every one of you, Joanna, there are 10 residents whose family comes in once every 2 months.
Which is why we advocate so strongly for people to be the voice of their loved one in
Right.
facilities. We try to get people to understand the importance of being present. I had a doctor in that facility that told me there were so many in there that did not have family or friends coming to visit. And he took it upon himself to sort of advocate for them. But he eventually left. He just eventually just was gone. And this is one of the things that we try to do, get people to do, know what to do, know how to do it, know your resources, which is why we do these podcasts. We want people to be informed and know what resources they have and use them.
25 years, I've sat across from the family of a resident who's been hurt or killed in a nursing home, right? For 25 years, every single day. That's what I do every single day for 25 years. And I'll do it for the next 25 years, right? And I can tell you what I hear more than anything. The phrase I hear more than anything. I trusted them. I trusted the professionals. When I asked, how did you not know about this huge gaping hole in your mother's backside? I trusted them. They never told me about it. Why would I think that this thing was happening? I never even thought that I needed to look at her backside. I assumed they would tell me, right? If you trust the professionals in a nursing home, you are asking for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, we wanna believe. I mean, look, what are we buying when we put our loved one in a nursing home? It's a hard thing to do. I mean, I don't care about what the circumstances are, whether it's you just had a stroke, now you're in a hospital, and they come to you and they say, oh, by the way, you got to get out of the hospital this afternoon.
Yes.
Here's three nursing homes, choose one. And you know nothing about any of them, right?
That's exactly how they do it.
Yeah.
It's a horrible decision, right? But when you make the decision and then that nursing home kills your loved one, the idea that you're going to walk around for the rest of your life with that on your conscience is a secondary level of abuse that we don't even talk about because it's not legally recognizable. The guilt my clients face is unbelievable. And do you know why they trusted the nursing home? Because the nursing home sells trust.
Mm-hmm.
What do they say? We're going to treat your loved one like what?
Like our own.
Family, like
Mm-hmm.
family. Why?
Well,
Lisa, go
Joe,
ahead.
yeah,
I got on my soapbox. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I wanted to say, in that reference that you just made, you know, families can go on the CMS Compare website, right? And they're thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to make a great choice because these 5 nursing homes say that they have 5 stars. Well, I can tell you from my experience, especially in my dad's case, my dad was at Glen Burnie.
Uh,
If you go to the Compare website, I know some of the people on that website were putting 5 stars and giving great reviews. Those were the staff members because I know their names. So if you have staff members, I mean, one of them was the administrator. I'm not the administrator, the director of nursing. And I was like, these are the staff members. So when a family goes to a website, that website, and sees, these great reviews, it's coming from the staff. So how can you, so they're making so you're still making a bad decision because the staff is saying, oh yeah, we're great. And we have 5 stars.
Well, look, you can't make a great decision, right? But I'll give you an example. The more you look, the more you'll know. You're never going to have to make a perfect decision, and that's part of the love and the grace you got to give yourself. Whether your loved one was a victim of abuse or neglect, or you're afraid that could happen, you got to give yourself some grace in the fact that there is no perfect decision and there is no perfect nursing home. And by the way, I have sued 5-star nursing homes for terrible stories. Now, look, I mean, if you go to a CMS website and you see that it's a special focus facility with a 1-star staffing rating, a 1-star quality rating, 1-star overall rating, you may be tricked by a 5-star rating, but you should not choose a 1-star rating, right? And so, there's still benefit to that, but there's nothing compared to, can I talk to a member of the resident council? Can I talk to a member of the family council? Can I come do a tour and actually speak to somebody will you give me the contact information to a family member who's been here more than 6 months? That kind of stuff is better. And, you're using all your senses when you walk in there, whether it's urine or bleach. If you get punched in the face with an odor when you walk in the place, that's better than any number of stars on a website. But other things you can do, Tracy, is besides looking at just the CMS website, which I totally advocate that you do, not that it's perfect, but it's better than going in completely blind. Because if you just even pull up the last few survey results, you'll at least what kind of things have they actually been cited for? What kind of complaint investigations have been done? But another really great thing you can do, look, going to the facility's Facebook page and looking at their reviews, that's a waste of time. Because to your point, they're paying somebody on their staff to go in and write reviews. That's obvious. But if you go to like the employment sites, like Indeed, and like those different types of employment sites to see what the former people say about the place, that's way more useful. And sure, some of them might be, bad blood, but the truth is most bad blood situations in nursing homes are indicative of a bigger problem anyway. Because remember, understaffing, under budgeting is what causes most of the problems.
Now, one thing
I'm sorry, go ahead.
One thing they do to trick you is if you have a window of when your surveys is going to happen, might be a 3-month window, so it can be at any point. Well, the minute they get to that front door, the state, I've been a supervisor, an ADON, you're on the phone getting every employee you can into work, and people are bumping into each other for 3 or 4 days. And the minute that it's over with, it's back to, it's a Gaza Strip. There's no people out there to help.
No, that's why, and that's why
it's like a game. They know what to do, how to play.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about
that.
that.
And they change records. They change records.
Yes, they do.
Again, you learn a great deal about a facility if they've been cited heavily during an annual inspection. That's a terrible sign, because the truth is they know exactly what
absolutely. And they also take the records, like the medication and snacks, whatever, and they'll just initial it or put a initial, not necessarily, they don't want their initial there, because then they'd say, well, you filled this out, you were off that day. So it's really a dirty game that they play.
No, look, it's
so much money.
It's completely imperfect information at every step. There is no, like I said, there is no perfect way to know what you're dealing with, right? And I'll tell you the truth, the assessment you have to make as someone who's got a loved one in a nursing home is that you have imperfect information, tilted information, that every benefit of the doubt has been given to this nursing home, and that they're playing every angle. So their quality measures, like I've told you, I can tell you that there are tons of tricks with how you complete the minimum data set that's ultimately sent to CMS that decides how much money they get paid back by the state, as well as what the quality measures are. There's a lot of coding things you can do.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
They
yeah.
look like, oh, nobody ever gets a pressure ulcer here. But we have a ton of pressure ulcers because we just happen to be the facility that has all these ultra high need residents who also happen to be high reimbursement residents. And now our staffing
There
is
you go.
in the toilet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, but what's
Exactly.
helped, I'll tell you one thing that has helped. Payroll-based journaling. Are you familiar with that term?
Say that again, Joe.
Payroll-based journaling is now being used to set the staffing star ratings, right? So there's more manipulation that can be done on the quality staffing levels, like Laurel was just talking about. Like they staff up right before the inspection, or they upcode things a certain way in the minimum data set, and they end up getting 4 stars on their quality measures because they manipulated the system. And they used to do that for staffing too. I mean, it used to be, listen to how this used to work. They used to come, like Laurel said, they'd come, everyone would know they're coming, right?
Yeah.
And when they showed up, somebody ran in the back and called literally everybody in. Everyone's working a triple. And they create a staffing document that they submit to the Medicare under penalty of perjury that says, this is our staffing levels this week, you know? And the CMS would just take that and go, well, looks like they're
looks like
pretty great. And now give them a 3-star or 4-star staffing rating based on what they self-reported. Well, now though, there is some advances are happening, and payroll-based journaling is one of them. Payroll-based journaling is every quarter they have to submit their payroll data to CMS. This is literally hey, the aides and nurses punched in, punched out, got paid, got a check. It's harder. So what you're starting to see now, though, which is kind of comical, is you're seeing these star ratings trying to catch up with this. And so you're seeing, 5-star facility, 5-star quality, 1-star staffing. And we just know that's impossible.
Yeah.
So it is trying to catch up. But the truth is, Laurel, that there's no substitute for a present family member. Like if you're
absolutely.
the same way you can't trust the nursing staff.
Right.
When I worked in the nursing homes, you had certain families that were going to be a little bit more verbal and complaining. So I found it a good thing to do would be, I'd monitor, and I knew who these families were.
Of course you do.
And I went ahead before I knew who she's coming at 7 tonight. Trust me, I was in that room at 6:30 and everything was in order. But once again, like he was saying, the more you're there and the more you see things you don't like, usually they're going to step it up.
So advocacy, awesome points. Those are awesome points, Laurel. Advocacy begins with, who am I advocating to? Like, what does the person I'm advocating to actually care about? And I always tell my students, people who are interested in caregiving or advocacy, I always say, listen, when you're being an advocate, you're not relying on what moves you, right? Because Joanna, what moves you, Tracy, Carolyn, Laurel, what moves you is common decency, love, humanity. I don't want elderly people. Your loved ones have already been victims, and you're sitting here on a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock trying to help people you'll never meet have a better existence. That's love. That's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're advocating, that's not what's important. What's important is, who are you advocating to and what do they care about? And what I tell people is this: to the nursing home, it's a business.
Yes.
The nursing staff, it's a job.
Yep.
So now if you look at those two things and you say,
Right.
what matters to them, not to you, and I'm not telling you not to do this from love. That's awesome. What I'm
Right.
saying is your advocacy cannot just appeal to humanity or morality. I'm telling you, they will walk on morality.
Mhm.
Businesses will walk on morality. You all know that. You've seen
Yes.
that. So what moves them? What moves the people in the job, right? They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get fired.
Right.
They
Right.
don't want
Sure.
to get disciplined. They don't want to lose their license. They don't want to have to go find a new job. They don't want to get their resume together. They don't want to have a suspension. They don't want to have something in their personnel file. They don't want to not get their raise, right? So when you walk in, and let me give you one more principle to go with. It's a job for the staff. It's a business for the owners. There's one more thing you got to know, right? It's a world of limited resources. Laurel just described the situation. There's gonna be, if you are understaffed, and almost all of them are, whether it's intentional or accidental, they're understaffed. And if there's lack of staff, someone's not gonna get the care they need. And now it becomes who? And if you are doing a job and you don't want to get in trouble, and you know that Joanna's going to come walking down that hall like she does every night at 7 o'clock with a notebook in her hand, asking a bunch of questions about why her mother's in a wet diaper at 7 o'clock. And resident 2 hasn't had a visitor in 2 months. And
Right.
they're both wet right now. Which one's getting changed?
Exactly.
Mhm.
To take it to the next level, because again, now you've leveraged, it's their job and they don't want to get in trouble. And for the business, when you start doing things like, I show up at care plan conferences, I take notes, I will contact the Office of Licensure on you if I have to. I will get the ombudsman down here.
Yeah.
I have no problem calling Joe Musso and bringing a suit against you. That's when the business goes, this is a lady, this is a guy
Just
who
paying attention.
you need to be on top of him. Squeaky wheel gets the oil in these situations because there
Yeah.
ain't enough to go around. And that's a sad thing. I always say, I hate telling people this, that the truth of the matter is, if you don't take the resources, someone else will. Because it sounds like I'm trying to advocate you protect your loved one over the loved one of someone else, which is a terrible thing. I hate it. I wish there was enough resources that everyone got the care. That's what we're all working for.
Right.
But until then, the sad, painful truth is you need to show up and know what you're talking about, or your loved one is going to be the one who doesn't get the resources. And to Laurel's point, not only should they be expecting you at 6:30, they should think you're the type of person who might show up at 6:30 a.m. You know, you should be rotating that visitation.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
never letting them know when you should never
Yeah.
have a pattern. Even if you show up after work every day, every once in a while you got to show up at lunch. Take a half day one day and show up in the morning just to make sure they know you can.
I
That's
think
how you
Carolyn
I
had a
agree. That's
question. Carolyn,
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. That's, it was so good what we were hearing, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I've been taking quite a few notes that I kind of want to support and reiterate what you have been saying, Joe. And I really appreciate the value in trying to prevent these things from happening. I think I'm probably representative of most people that end up in a nursing home. We ended up there, didn't know what to research, didn't know what questions to ask, didn't know where to go to look at a rating or anything. My brother was in the hospital. He was finished with treatment and was told he had to go to a nursing home. So I didn't know anything about how to research and didn't know. So, we ended up where we ended up, but because, and I don't call it complaining, I call it being an advocate for my brother and being involved and knowing things were wrong and what didn't look right and just was not going to allow him to be mistreated. And one of the things that I've learned on this journey is that we get frustrated because to us, it's about humanity, but everyone doesn't have this sense of decency and
Exactly.
humanity that we have.
That's true.
And those are the points that you were pointing to. What drives people? And sometimes it's the fear, sometimes it's the greed, it's the money. We're thinking the common thread should be decency and humanity, and it is not. Everybody does not have that kind of heart. So
No.
I appreciate those comments. We're at a point now, I think all of us on this call where we've lost loved ones or our loved ones are no longer in need of that care. But because of the decency that we have to be voices for people that are there that don't have the families that show up every day with the notebook and that are willing to make noise. It's like, what about those people? And
Think
again, I
about your legacy,
appreciate,
Carolyn. Think about
yeah,
your legacy. I'm so sorry to cut you off.
no, go, go, go.
I just want you to know how beautiful it is as someone who's done this for 25 years to see you four powerful women doing something that, we say something at Williams Deloach in our nursing home department. We say that the reason we do this is because an elderly man or woman that we will never meet one day will live a more dignified existence, sleep a little easier, have a little less pain, and a family will be able to rest a little easier because of work we did, but we'll never ever know it. And that's got to be the kind of
And that's
thing you're
okay.
doing. I look at what Carolyn just said about how her brother went into this situation and they said, she started to try to advocate, but nobody was there to teach her. And now here she is again, Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock. She's giving up her time so that someone hearing this podcast is going to go, oh, I should have a notebook. Oh, I should ask questions. Oh, I should get a copy of the records.
Really?
Oh, I should know who the doctor is. I
Yeah.
can't just trust them to do it. Because here's the
Yeah.
sneaky, scary thing about it, Carolyn. Not only do most people not know anything about how to advocate for this and they're thrust into this spot, the nursing home doesn't want you to know.
Right.
Oh,
So
They call you
Joe,
complainers. They call you
is there
complainers.
is there, and I've been called worse, so that doesn't bother me.
That you have.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a checklist? Like, has someone developed a checklist for people that are in situations where, you're now told that, we're done with your hospital care, but the next step in this process of supposedly your healing is to go to a nursing facility for rehab or whatever the situation is. Because if there's a checklist, like, look at the ratings, look at if they've been cited, look at blah, blah, blah. Is there a checklist somewhere?
So
Well,
I'm
we
sure you
actually,
have one.
yeah, look, if you Google, what do you need to know about nursing homes, nursing home checklist, you'll find books. And if you go to Consumer Voice, which is the DC advocacy group, you can get a lot of great materials there. I have written Empowered Advocate, which is, through Williams Deloach right now, we're putting out, and we're doing cards of these are your rights, and this is what you can ask for, and this is how, there's tons of material out there, and I'll give you guys. I'm happy. I will, after this is over, I will email you or have Heather email you everything that me and Williams Deloach have been doing to try to educate the public, and you can use it
That'd
any
be
way
great.
you
Thank
want.
you.
But the truth is, some of it, you're just going to have to go and spend the time and look it up and learn it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but there's the fact that there's groups like you guys now, because if someone were to call you right now, Carolyn, and say, like, I listened to your podcast and I don't even know where to begin. If I even just had like a top 10 list, if Carolyn calls me, I give her that top 10 list in 2 seconds. You guys could probably write the top 10 list. But the fact that there's folks like you out there who's willing to put resources out into the public consciousness, because it's like a fish that doesn't know it's wet. People
Yeah.
don't know they're
No.
supposed to be doing something else.
Right.
They're being
Right.
encouraged by the facility to be ignorant of what's supposed to be going on.
Correct.
Don't worry, we'll take care of it. We're dealing with it.
And you're exactly right. And I said, I probably think I'm representative of the average person when it comes to this type of thing. You know, your brother needs to go into a nursing facility and here a list, you know, and what to do. But I had enough wherewithal with me to start digging a little bit, but the average person is just going to go with whatever they're told because, again, as you said, they are dependent upon the professionals. The professionals know better, and I trust them. And that's how a lot of people end up in the situation.
One thing
But
is,
Joe, I want to bring up one thing. Okay, the role of maybe a doctor in this, and I hear and I accept everything that you said about the difficulty in having a lawsuit. You know, first finding an attorney that will take it and all the whys behind that. But you know, if there's a situation where, okay, I'll use myself as an example. My brother was diagnosed with having seizures, never had seizures before. So they had him on all of this medication. It was a bad situation. I literally pulled him out, went to visit him one day and said, get in my car. Literally, he didn't have shoes on. He had socks. We were just done. Took him directly to the emergency room, and the doctor there looked at the medicine he was on. He scratched his head. He said, I don't know why he shouldn't have been on this, blah, blah, blah. So what role does that doctor have? You know, when there's a misdiagnosis and unnecessary medicine prescribed, and now we have all the documentations, we have all the proof. And I mean, of course, nothing happened. He didn't go back there, but nothing. I reported it, and you know,
And let me
nothing
add to
happened.
that, Joe. If she had taken that scenario and come to an attorney and say, hey, we have the proof that he was given this medicine, which is a form of abuse.
yeah,
So how would an attorney have handled that as a second part to her question?
Shoot the messenger, okay? I'm gonna just tell you the God's honest truth because that's what I have to do. I have to tell you the truth.
Yes, we want the truth.
Finding someone to sue a doctor over an 88-year-old nursing home resident, for example. Now, your brother may have been younger,
Yeah,
but
he's younger.
the vast majority of my cases, the average age of my client is 88. They have late stage dementia. They are on long-term care. They're in a nursing home already, and they're bedbound or they're getting artificial nutrition. They're not in like the prime of their life, and if it's hard to sue a nursing home for that, and it is, it's almost impossible to bring a medical malpractice case against a doctor for it.
Why?
And here's the reason.
And
Okay.
not the doctor, the nursing home facility,
Right,
not
but
the
the doctor
doctor.
that prescribed it.
Yeah, but yeah, that doctor, because I'm like in my mind, the doctor in the emergency room who said to me, he should never have been on this. They said he was having seizures. And my question was what tests did you do to show
exactly.
these procedures? And I kept getting he was shaking. I'm like, he might have been shaking because he was cold. I mean, there has to be some type of testing
Exactly.
done.
That's true.
When I see the doctor cases,
Yeah.
The vast majority of physician allegation cases are he shouldn't be on so much medication. He's lethargic and exhausted, and he's just laying in there. He looks like a vegetable. He's lost his spark. He's not engaging, and he's on this Seroquel like crazy dose, and he shouldn't be on it. And the issue starts to become a medical judgment issue, meaning can we actually prove that the dosage they're giving was inappropriate? And like you said, there's usually 15 other medical explanations for why my 90-year-old resident was tired. And of course, they're pointing out, well, it's failure to thrive is what they'll start calling it. He's got depression. He's got this. He's got that. His wife just died 6 months ago. He's not eating the way he is. He's giving up. It's not the Seroquel, right? And we get into this like, well, who's right? And we have the burden of proof as the plaintiff. The only time I've ever really, the times I brought physician cases, like you prescribed X, Y, or Z for this resident, is if they prescribed something that clearly killed or seriously injured and could not reverse it. I can tell you, I get probably a phone call. I wouldn't even say it's every month. Maybe it's every other month. I get a call about a prescription that was either screwed up by the pharmacy, screwed up by the nurses, or the doctor prescribed it poorly. And they end up having to take this person to the hospital where they're administered, Narcan to reverse it. And they reverse it. And they want to sue. And it's a clear mistake. I mean, they clearly should not have given this person this much medication. But because it got reversed, it would cost more to prosecute the lawsuit than you'd likely get. Because behind all of this, in the civil context, which is what I do, I sue for money, is the truth. Again, all I can do is tell you the truth. The truth is your lawyer is taking 3% of whatever they recover right off the top.
Yeah.
Then whatever litigation expenses, experts, administration experts, nursing experts, physician experts, infectious disease experts, court reporters, exhibits, it's not uncommon to spend $50,000 to $100,000 prosecuting one of these cases over 3 or 4 years, right? And that comes out after my 40% comes out. Then Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, Medicare Advantage, anything they paid towards medical bills relating to the allegations in your case. So if you've got broken bone, if you've got a bed sore, and Medicare, Medicaid treated any of that, they get paid before the family.
Wow.
And what starts to happen is you start looking at it going, I'm going to spend $75,000 on a case to get $50,000. I can't do that as a business person. I can't do that.
Yeah. So I guess going back to what you said in your opening remarks, I guess I'm trying to understand too the accountability of maybe a doctor that's in the emergency room when he sees there's been neglect or abuse. If a child goes to an emergency room and there's a broken bone, they are supposed to report it to the appropriate authorities. So I guess my question is, when a senior citizen is brought to the emergency room and there are clear signs of neglect or abuse, what is the responsibility of the emergency room? Who do they report it to? Are they required to report it?
They are required to report it.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is, where they have to report it, could be the police. It could be the Office of Licensure. It could be Adult Protective Services. But yeah, the bottom line is when they make a determination that abuse or neglect has occurred, they do have a duty to report it. But let me paint a picture for you, Carolyn, because everywhere is different. But let's just pick a random place that's kind of rural. We won't use a real town, okay? But I can tell you this is based on a real town. And in this real town that we'll keep anonymous, there is one hospital, there is essentially a town doctor, and there's a nursing home. And that's all there is in this town. And that doctor works as the medical director in that nursing home and has a private practice in that town. And he's been treating like the whole town and his father was before that. And the hospital feeds patients to the nursing home, and the nursing home feeds patients to the hospital. And the entire economic area and the jobs in that area are all dependent on all these medical institutions. And now a resident comes from the nursing home and is malnourished, dehydrated, filthy, smells, looks like they haven't had a bath, has a stage 4 pressure ulcer on her sacrum with a backdated dressing over it that looks like it hasn't been touched in a month. And that nursing staff and those doctors at that hospital have a decision to make. Am I going to make a permanent enemy of the company across the street? And I mean literally across the street from me. Where next thing I know, when we send one of our patients to them, which is going to be like later this afternoon, they're going to be reporting us for the condition of that patient. These kinds of games are played all the time.
Yeah.
We don't start wars with businesses across the street from us when they can literally fire back at us later this afternoon with the same kind of allegation. We're not going to go and try to call something that we don't have to call neglect. We can just call it failure to thrive. Failure to thrive is a very specific diagnosis about giving up. And it is in the medical records of nursing home residents at a ridiculously disproportionate rate compared to the reality of the situation. And it's because of people who don't want to say it's neglect and abuse. I can't tell you how many times I deal with a pressure ulcer case. Infected pressure ulcer, needs a diverting colostomy because feces is getting into the wound. Septic infection. You go and you look at the death certificate from the doctor and it says Alzheimer's disease is the cause of death, not the massive gigantic wound that was infected at the time of their death. That wasn't the cause of death. Why would that possibly be? It's because they don't want to get deposed in a lawsuit about how they made that determination. It doesn't happen. I'm not trying to paint something that's like so scary that you should keep you up at night. And I'm not saying this happens every day, everywhere. I'm saying it happens enough that after 25 years, I'm not surprised by it anymore.
So Joe, here's
It
my
takes courage to call somebody that you're going to see tomorrow morning again at work and say they neglected or abused that resident. It takes courage. I do see it occasionally, but it's not nearly as much as I should see it. Sorry, Joanna, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's just fine, because that scene that you spoke of it's almost like it creates a ceiling. And this is exactly what I experienced in my personal situation with my mom. I did everything that I could do to alert everyone that I could alert, in writing, verbally, but yet still nothing was done. There was no repercussions or there's no accountability to the nursing facility. And this is what happens so often, and I get it. There's this big game that goes on, money being, I feel, at the root of it.
Yep.
And I guess this is the same thing that a lot of families feel, because even though we say, say something, do something, this is what you should do, but then they sit and say, what difference is it going to make? We've literally had people say to us, this has been going on for all these years, nothing's going to happen. And if you're asked the question, how can we actually make these nursing facilities pay for what they're doing? When I call the licensure division of the Department of Health to file a complaint, she told me that it would take 365 days for them to get back to me. And of course that infuriated me, because
Sure.
As it should.
Crazy.
and I said, so you're trying to tell me that you have 365 days worth of complaints that are coming in. And so what does that say about your department? Because my understanding is there is also accountability that rests there as well. And we feel as an organization, there's also accountability on behalf of our representatives who blatantly, except for maybe 2 out of the 100, ignore this situation. We've sat in the House sessions. We've seen how the voting system goes. We've heard one particular representative that says he serves on the board of some of these nursing facilities.
Right.
Conflict of interest.
Right.
But yet
I didn't even mention the scenarios throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia where the hospital and the nursing home in that town are owned by the same health system.
See, that's what I'm saying. And another thing, this is the part that really gets to the meat of the frustration that family members feel, because no matter how much you kick up, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much you write about it, no matter how much you reach out, there's always this stubble that just stops you, or that says, okay, nothing's going to happen. And I think nursing facilities, the directors and the managing companies, they take advantage of that, because there's this ironclad hold that prevents them from being held accountable for the loss of lives. Let's toss out compassion and just having a heart and being concerned. I agree. Everybody's not going to do that. But how is it even profitable from a business standpoint that you're killing people? And how is it, at some point, there's going to be an alternative. People are going to come up with other ways to care for their loved ones eventually, rather than put them there. I mean, it has to be, because if we can't break the tree that seems so deeply rooted in profit, then there has to come an alternative means by which people will figure it out. Look, before I allow this neighbor to go into a nursing facility, let's do this, or let's get, people have this ability to do this, but haven't yet. I see it probably coming, because in addition to that, then there's this statute of limitations that, the forms that you sign in when you come into these nursing facilities, statute of limitations before you can
Arbitration.
Here in Virginia, 2 years. I mean,
arbitration agreements now. They sneak these arbitration agreements into the
is it? Yes.
the admission agreement.
Yes, the
They
arbitration
make you
agreement.
waive your right to bring a lawsuit at all, and you end up instead in front of a retired judge that works for a company I want you to think about how crazy this is. You sign an arbitration agreement in Virginia that's like on page 50 of a 100-page
Yes.
agreement.
Yes.
And now you have an arbitration clause, and it says you're going to, instead of going in front of a jury in your community to point out what this company did to your mom, you're going to go in front of a judge, and the nursing home gets to choose who the judge is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how many
Jesus, this is terrible.
I don't know how many cases Tracy Pompey is going to send to that judge, but I can tell you that the nursing home industry is going to send a ton of them to that judge, because they're going to do it on every one of their cases. So this judge who's making $500 an hour doing these arbitrations, if they start ruling against the nursing home's going to pick a different judge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you even get your head around how crazy that is?
But why is
I
it
mean, these
allowed,
people
though?
basically have no conscience whatsoever.
No, they don't.
It's all about their
They have
money, and you're just a.
Now, again, I don't want to say that about, I certainly would not say that about every nurse or every aide
No,
or
no.
every,
I'm talking about the company itself, and
I will tell you that in my experience, there are better operated homes. There are good owners who try to do that. I always say that there's two types of scenarios that lead to abuse and neglect. And I spend most of my time in my profession dealing with the second one. But the first one is bad too. And so let me explain them both to you really quickly. A business owner is trying to make a profit, because a nursing home is a business. And we as advocates, we just cannot ignore that. You ignore that at your peril. We want businesses to act morally. Of course we do. And it doesn't mean that we are like, well, you can't turn a profit. I understand they need to make a profit. But if the most fungible expense in your business is the staff that provides the care to the residents, and you're trying to maintain the most profit you can possibly get by keeping that staffing level at the absolute lowest level without killing or hurting anybody, all you got to do is make a little mistake and dip below that line, and someone gets hurt. These people are not making plastic furniture. They're caring for the most vulnerable human beings in our society.
Right.
If a little mistake kills someone, we can't let you make little mistakes. And those are the good guys. Those are the guys who are trying to do it right. The bad guys are the ones who say, I'm going to bring it down here and hold it here as long as I can to make as much money as possible. and hope that the person who gets hurt doesn't get a lawyer. There are companies that this is their profit model. If they run this far below the staffing level long enough, they'll have so much money that even if they get sued and they settle the lawsuit, they're still coming out ahead. And with that group, you can't stop that group. All you can do is continue to sue them, continue to attack them, and make sure that organizations like yours know who they are, so that informed people can go, that is a special focus facility that has been this bad for years and years and years. When you see one-star staffing ratings and one-star quality ratings and special focus facility ratings, and it's not one bad year, it's boom, 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 6 years in a row. How many years in a row of people dying in your business would it take you to make a change?
Right.
Unless that's your model. That these residents dying are just some broken eggs in your omelet.
But let me ask a question, Joe. Why do you think that our government, our state government, would be okay allowing that?
They probably go to the same country club.
They can't stop it. No, the honest answer is they can't stop it. Here's the truth. I love your idea. I do. I love your idea of an alternative to caring for these folks. I think it's great. I think if someone can come up with that alternative and it's reasonably priced, you're going to have a great business on your hands. But here's the truth. Nobody, I say this in every one of my depositions practically, nobody goes into a nursing home because they want to.
Right.
Nobody chooses. The things cost as much as the Four Seasons of Beverly Hills. Nobody's going in there because they want to. They're going in there because they have to. Because these families have made a determination that if they stay at home, they're gonna die. They're gonna burn their house down. They're gonna get outside and get hurt. They're gonna hurt themselves. And they can't. I work. I got kids. Whatever it is, I can't 24/7 do this. And they go, I don't have a choice. I've got to go to a nursing. She's got to go to a nursing home for her safety. We're choosing these places because the absence of them is even worse.
But let me ask you, I don't mean to interrupt, but the other side to that is if you want to keep your family member at home, but you cannot get Medicaid to give you enough support to do that. They don't want to give you or approve you. I just had this discussion with an attorney at the Virginia Poverty Law Center.
Sure.
They don't want to give you enough hours for you to opt to keep your loved one at home, which was my mom's situation. I was more than happy to keep her at home, wanted to keep her at home, applied for the coverage, had the doctor's letters to say, she does need full-time, round-the-clock care. Why do they not want to allow people to do that are opting to do that? It's almost as if they seem to benefit in some way by sending people in Medicaid off to these nursing facilities.
I mean, it's money. I'll tell you why. So when you say that somebody needs 24/7 nursing home care, right? Or 24/7 care, you're not actually saying that 24 hours a day, every minute of the day, someone needs to be working on your loved one. Right? I mean, we're not saying that. She sleeps.
It's not happening in the nursing facility.
No. But if someone comes into you, let's say you have a nurse and an aide, and they come into your home to care for your mom on a 24/7 basis. First of all, you need a nurse and an aide for 3 different shifts. Right? And they are sitting there and they're just caring for your mom. And so when they change your mom's diaper, keep her clean, do this, and now they've got an hour and a half of downtime, the government does not want to pay them to sit there. When they're in a nursing home and there's another resident across the hall, and now as soon as they're done with you, they go and take care of that person and then come back to your mom when your mom needs something. That's the actual model of a nursing home. But because the owners are so taking advantage of that situation that they're putting one nurse for 30 people, but billing Medicare and Medicaid, quite frankly, as if they have more, you're creating this problem. The reason why they're not going to give you 24/7 in-home care is because no one really needs 24 hours of nursing care at any given time, and they're not going to pay for the downtime. And the flip is, at the nursing home, we have this thing called hours per patient day. How much time are we spending caring per resident? How many hours of nursing care are being given? And a lot of studies say it's about 4.1 hours a day that a nursing home resident needs actual hands-on care. The problem is you don't know exactly when that's going to be. So you can't just have someone come in for 4 hours, because you never know when that exact 4 hours is going to be necessary, right? But nursing homes are typically running 2/9, 3/1. They're an hour or two below the minimum needs of that resident.
What I ended
And
up doing,
I think it's very complex, and that whenever the solution is discovered, it's certainly not going to be one solution. It's
Agreed.
going to be several things, because I was able years ago to care for my great grandmother in my home. My cousins, my mom, we all came together and cared for her. That allowed me to work, and we were able to do it. My brother, I could not. Physically, I could not. I could not change him. I could not bathe him. I could not do it. So even if I wanted to do it, I was not able to take care of him because his condition was different than my grandmother. So I think it's going to be buckets.
I think it's subjective. I really do, because in my case, I was able to do my mom's medicines. I had been doing them. I took her to her doctor's appointments. I needed someone to come in because I was working full time and I had a young child, and I wanted someone to come in the morning. So you said like 7 to 3, and then have some come in the evening so that I could sleep. Because she was up pretty much all night.
Right.
And that was a problem.
They wouldn't give it to you.
It was a problem. They would not approve the hours for that. And so I eventually had to stop working. They said that she was only allowed to get 35 hours a week. So the 7 to 3 person came in on that 35 hours. And of course, there was it's not a full 40 hours.
Right.
And I had to be with my mom after that until she came back. I had to stop working. I eventually had to stop working. And I couldn't get the social worker, to reason, to understand. And she said, well, that's the way the law is written. That's the way it's written, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, which is why I said it's subjective, because it wasn't as though I totally depended on, we didn't need to have a nurse unless there was an event in which I would call 911.
Right.
I just needed the care for her while I was working.
Right.
And I think the subjective part of this process for Medicaid has been dismissed because they take that broad brush and just paint.
This is a rule. Right.
Yeah, this is it.
And that's why I say it needs to be buckets, because
Yeah.
they lump everybody together. And as Joe said, nursing homes are there for a reason. Nobody wants to go, but sometimes there are situations where maybe families don't have another option, or they think they don't have enough, because clearly my sister and I could not give my brother the level of care that he needed when he first came out of the hospital. He was bedridden, tubes. We just could not do it. I could not do it with my grandmother, because her case was not as severe as my brother. And even with my mother, she died three years ago now. I was able to take care of her, and I have family support. So, my sister, we came up with a calendar, you're there from this shift to that shift, you can do that. And not everybody even has that. But my aunts, all of us came together and we took care of her, but everybody does not have that, and hence
Yeah.
the dependence
True.
on the nursing facility, unfortunately.
think
It's kind
And
Tracy,
of,
that's one of the things.
yeah, I was just gonna say, and then you wanted to say something.
oh, Trace, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and that's one of the things, even during my time of my years of working, I noticed that with a lot of families that when I would go to their home, because I also did private care, a lot of families, I went to a lot of homes where they only had one person
Right.
taking care, and one lady actually had to quit because they had no other coverage. Other family members didn't support, so that you just have one family member taking care of their loved one and not really having all the 24-hour or
Right. You
care
can
that
quit,
they need.
you can quit your job and stop sleeping,
Yes,
or
Exactly,
put them in a nursing
exactly.
home and pray every night that your
Yeah,
loved one doesn't get
so
hurt or
you
killed.
could get sick and then end up in a nursing home yourself.
yeah.
Right.
But Joe, I wanted to ask you a question. Going back to being able to sue. If a facility, let's say if there's clear neglect and a family can't sue a facility, is there a way that is the family allowed to sue the actual, let's say the actual nurse, or what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah,
the nurse or someone that was actually, if there's a clear evidence of neglect.
yeah, there's very few scenarios where you would want to sue the nurse directly and not sue the nursing home. And
Okay.
the first reason is the nurse's insurance and assets would have to be the nursing homes, right? So she doesn't carry her own nursing insurance. That insurance comes through the nursing home as part of her employment. So even if you sue her, the
It's
nursing home is going to defend
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
Um, but if you only sue her and you don't sue the nursing home too, you're limited only to what that particular nurse did or did not do, which may or may not be enough. But you're creating, and I don't want to get too technical, but you're creating a potential scenario. Like I'll give you the example of where it can get really dicey to do that is the intentional harm. So I've handled, as sad as this is, I've handled many rape cases in nursing homes. And rape cases, you can sue the aide, the perpetrator who did it, but he doesn't have insurance of his own. He doesn't have a whole, he was making $7.50 an hour at the time he was working as an aide in this nursing home. He doesn't have some big wealthy estate for me to recover from if I win the lawsuit against him. But when you go and sue the nursing home says, look, rape's not part of the job. And so he's not acting inside the scope of his employment when he raped that resident. And the law is actually, especially in the Commonwealth of Virginia, very touchy about that. You basically, if you can't prove that that nursing home ownership, the managers, employers, that they had some reason to think that that perpetrator could do something like that, like he's got a criminal history they didn't check into, they didn't look at his resume, he had prior complaints that they ignored. If it's just a one-off thing and the guy attacks a resident somehow, and you just sue the nurse themselves or the aide that did it, you might get $1 million judgment or a $2 million judgment against that nurse, but it's not going to be worth the paper it's printed on because you're going to be trying to get it against somebody who makes $8 an hour and doesn't have anything to take.
Okay.
I mean, you might feel good about getting the number, but you're not actually getting any of the money from the guy. You know what I mean? But I
Okay.
can't tell you how often I see situations like that where the aide doesn't even get charged criminally. Because the other thing is the
Wow,
prosecutor, you're seeing a theme here, right? The
wow.
prosecutors don't want to prosecute elderly. Going back to Joanna's understandable frustration that our politicians just don't seem to care about this, right? It goes back all the way to the beginning of our conversation, right? If this happens in a daycare center with kids, the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
world is up in arms and
Yeah.
lawyers are lining up, right? the same thing with the politics. If I told you that children were dying from bed sores and malnutrition and falling
Right.
down stairwells and breaking their necks and being abused in daycare centers, and the reason it's happening is there's not enough surveyors in the Commonwealth of Virginia to do appropriate inspections and licensing for daycare centers, every damn senator and congressman would be on the steps of the Capitol with a microphone in their face going, I'm going to pass a bill for $1 trillion in more agents and officers. But this shit, sorry,
It's okay.
this stuff happens to our elders every single day. I can tell you, I know it's been happening for 25 years that I've been doing it every single day.
And now you see our frustration.
One of them. You can't get one of them
So
to come and try to get increased funding for surveys.
In the industry that I like to compare this to,
Sorry, back off my soapbox. I apologize.
Stay on it. We need people to stay on the soapbox. You know, I've often had this conversation with friends and colleagues when we get into this philosophical stuff, and we look at the tobacco industry. How many reports, studies, research shows that nicotine to cancer? How many? But still, we do not kill the tobacco industry because so much money is tied into that industry. If it was any other product, a car seat, a playpen, a bottle of Tylenol, we would recall it in a heartbeat, no hesitation whatsoever. But the tobacco industry, when we know nicotine is linked to cancer, and it's because so much money is tied in that industry. If they shut it down, we could collapse. And it's the same thing with nursing homes. It's so much money tied in that behind the scenes. And I think that's why we don't see the movement that we want to see. Guns. I mean, there are a number of industries that we know. We have research, we have reports, we have studies, we have statistics, and we know the harm that they're doing. But this country does not have the willpower to say enough is enough. We're going to stop this because of the money and the loud lobbyists that are in that. And until we find the lobbyist to go on Capitol Hill to make the necessary noise, this will unfortunately continue.
Yeah,
the craziest thing about the nursing home industry is that they cry poor.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they, you know, if you don't know how to read a nursing home cost report, and most people can't. I mean, there are very complicated documents to read. But if you got a FOIA request for a nursing home cost report, you're going to see millions of dollars going into that nursing home from government agencies like Medicare and Medicaid. And you're going to see millions of it coming out in the form of related management companies and you know, therapy companies that are all owned by the same guy. But by the time they get to the bottom line, the nursing home is broke. I mean, I see that every single day, right? These guys are crying poor while making millions and claiming that the reason that they can't provide the care is there's not enough money. They need more money. It's the most insane thing. So one of the things that Ernie Tosh, who's my colleague at Bedsore Law, has been really pushing hard is transparency in organizational related entities. That these companies have got to be more, transparent with where's the money actually going. Yeah. Because you keep saying like you have no money for healthcare, you have no money for staff, you have no money to boost the staffing levels, but you're paying $2 million in rent to a company that you own.
Yeah, right. I saw his webinar and it was awesome.
Blows your mind, right?
Yes, it did. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like to listen to it. It was like criminal the way he explained it.
That's exactly what it is. It is criminal.
Yeah.
It's like the mafia. He says it's like
it is. Yeah.
when we formed this organization, that's the word we used. It's, this is like we're dealing with a mafia. And within the next, well, we have a few more minutes left, about 10 more minutes left in the podcast, but I wanted to also just bring to light the fact that where does the federal, ask a question, where's the federal government coming into this in terms of accountability? Because we see all of the things that, especially with this administration, that's coming out, with regard to the Elder Justice Initiative. When I read all the requirements and all the laws and et cetera with regard to nursing facilities statewide,
Yeah.
where does the federal government come in terms of making the state accountable? If the state itself is not operating in such a way, how does
They'd have to
the
withhold
federal
funds.
government play into that?
They would have to withhold funds or something like that from the state. That's the only way you're going to get the state to move, is to say federal money is not going to come to you unless you do X, Y, and Z. And the truth of the matter is, it's a tough bluff to make, because what happens if the state doesn't get the federal money in this context?
Is that
the
something
federal-
that would get the representatives to move, though, to do what they need to do?
I think most of them would look at it and say, well, what is the federal government going to do? Take it over themselves? I mean, they're not stopping it either. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we vacillate politically so much. Look at the arbitration agreement. Obama's tenure outlawed them. No more arbitration agreements in nursing home contracts. I had been on that fight for 20 years when that passed. It was like a celebration, like we won something. It went to Trump and it got killed. And then it went to Biden, where it's now like, you can have them, but you have to, it's got to be big, bold letters. You know what I mean? Like, it keeps going, and the next person will win, and that'll be removed.
And there'll be another thing.
Right. It's just, we're not getting anywhere.
And meanwhile, lives are
being lost.
Yeah.
They just don't value lives at the end of life the way they do at the beginning and the middle. And look, I understand that on some level. I understand the idea of the preciousness of youth, and I certainly am not suggesting we shouldn't be serious about that. But our apathy towards the elderly in this country is appalling. And it's funny, it should unify us in all of our other identity politics, because it doesn't matter if you're black, white, something else. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. We all have parents who we love. We all have grandparents that we love. This is something that should unite us all. Now, that said, like a lot of things in this country, nursing home abuse is disproportionately African American.
And it's funny you
Joe,
mentioned
and I
that,
think-
because there was a court hearing that went to a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court under the 19th century law. Have you heard about that?
No.
So apparently there was this lawsuit filed under a measure known as Section 1983.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry, 1983. Yes, of course, I know. Yeah, you can now sue a county government. You can now sue a county nursing home for 1983 violations. It's a huge decision.
It was huge, and it just happened recently. So I think that's something that I guess
it only applies against government-owned facilities, though.
Yeah, and and the rate at which private corporations are purchasing nursing homes in Virginia, that's another issue that is just, it's crazy. They're just swallowing them up.
You know what punitive damages are?
Yes.
So, just in case your listeners aren't fully familiar, punitive damages are the damages that are designed to punish. Okay, this is not what the compensation for the loss of your loved one is. This company did something so bad, they intentionally understaffed, knowing people were going to die, and they did it anyway to make money, kind of thing, right? You got to prove a heightened level of intent. You got to prove a willful and wanton disregard for the sanctity of life. You've got to prove essentially a a knowing, intentional harm of human beings for your profit motive, right? It's a very high bar to prove, is my point. But in Virginia, if you prove it, and some jury gives you $30 million against Consulate or Genesis or ManorCare or one of these gigantic
Yeah.
publicly traded companies, in Virginia, it gets automatically reduced to $350,000. Let me tell you now. Now, look, I ain't turning my nose up at $350,000. It's a lot of money to
But
me. I'm sure it's a lot of money to you. But let me tell you who it's not a lot of money for. Medicare, Genesis, Consulate, Sabre
correct.
Healthcare. They blow their nose with $350,000. $350,000 is like a week of their advertising budget. It's nothing. It's a rounding error for these people. Not
So
going to be
Joe,
dissuaded by that.
yeah,
Sorry.
I agree. So there are two, that's, I guess, I know we're wrapping up, but two comments that I would like to share. Change is coming. It's slow. And when we look at other organizations that now are loud, they started at the grassroots level too. When we talk about PETA and, all of these other organizations that had a cause where just a group of people, just a handful of people stood up and say, this is not right. This is not right. I'm going to be vocal about it. Anybody that want to listen. And I'm sure they got frustrated that it wasn't moving as quickly. And people just kept hearing them and hearing them and hearing all of these, the Me Too movements that started years ago. Women have been complaining we've been treated unfairly, but all of a sudden it grew legs. So we just have to keep going, even when we're frustrated and think
Yeah.
that it's not moving as quickly. Still fight. We have to still fight, because if not us, who? And then Joe, to
Sometimes.
your point, no, last point about families and how we should really revere and honor our elders and our
Absolutely.
ancestors. We
Yep.
should, but there's been a shift in the culture
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
United States.
Yep.
Because if we truly did what Laurel said earlier, there wouldn't be people in the nursing homes and no one comes to visit them for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
There are people my age. Oh, I haven't seen my grandmother in 5 years. Yeah, where does she live? Oh, she lives around the corner. I mean,
Crazy.
so there is the shift. When
There
we
is.
grew up, it was generations. You grew up in the same home. Dinner
Oh,
was
yeah.
every Sunday at grandma's
Yep.
house. The family
Exactly.
gathered there. So
Exactly.
the nursing homes, I tell people the nursing homes, the schools, the churches, everything is just a reflection of society. It's just people in society going into these buildings.
Amen.
And there's this shift. People don't respect. I remember years ago, this was decades ago, working with this guy. It was a Monday, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? Blah, 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 kind of work talk. And he said, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And as a matter of fact, he said it just as a matter of fact, his grandmother had passed. I'm like, oh my God, sorry, but
Right.
he was like, yeah, no big deal. And I was floored. I
Yeah.
was floored at his
Yeah.
just and his response is like, no, no big deal.
Yeah.
It's the shift. It's the
No,
shift in
Yeah.
in our culture, in our
Yeah.
yeah.
society.
But look, you ladies are a light on a hill. The darker it gets, the more the light can be seen. And
That's true.
and you're right, Carolyn, that it takes time and that we have no choice but to go forward. And we
Yeah.
talked about a lot of things today that could make us feel hopeless. Pump the brakes on that, because I'm looking at four fierce women right now that are reasons for hope, and hope can overtake fear anytime. We can't be hopeless, because there are people like you ladies who are out there, not even anymore doing it for your current family members. You're doing it in their honor post-mortem, and doing it for the future of other people who you may not even meet. And that's just absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to tell you, people are going to join you because of your love, because of your passion, but also because of self-interest. Because here's the other truth. Sometimes, Carolyn, it's just about the right time. So sometimes it's a long, 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 long time,
And
but
then,
something happens that makes it go boom.
Dang,
We saw
it
that
all
in Me
comes
Too.
together.
We've seen that in civil rights. We've seen that in the LGBTQ. We've seen this in a lot of different movements. But here's the thing to remember. In the next 10 years, our population is going to shift to being more over 65 than under.
yes, exactly.
This
Correct.
problem is going to start impacting more people in their homes. And that's when it's not going to be, oh, them. It's going to be, oh, us. And you ladies are laying that groundwork. And I am so, so honored to be on with this, you guys today. And if I can help you in the future, you know where I am. And I'm just blessed to know all four of you giving the time that you're giving and the passion and the love. And I can see the memories of your loved ones in your spirit. It's beautiful what you guys are doing.
Well,
So
Joe,
please do not be hopeless. Do not be hopeless.
We're not. Sometimes it's crushing because of the response, you know, and believe it or not, there are people from outside of Virginia, the state of Virginia, that reach out to us.
I believe it.
With their stories, and some of them are horrific. So this is, while we are in Virginia and we are advocating in Virginia, this is nationwide. It's happening everywhere. And it's our hope that we could be the start, or, you know, the flame that starts the fire burning to make the difference in other states as well. You know, maybe there will be a time when other states will have their justice and change for victims of nursing facilities and build from that point. We hope that more attorneys like you, I'm glad that you're doing the teaching, because I think that not only your heart shows, but if you can, through your teaching, get them to understand that it's not even just about the law, but it is about where your heart is and whether or not you're willing to fight, you know, in that direction, which is against the stream.
And have the tools to do it, to
And
know,
then
to know
have
what
the
to
tools.
do.
Exactly.
Right.
So we really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah.
It was very informative.
Yes.
And we definitely will be reaching out to you.
Good.
And
But I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to get you that empowered caregiver stuff, and you guys can turn it into whatever you want to use. I mean, anything I have, you have. All right, we're on the same team in this war for sure, no doubt about that.
If there's
And
anything
Joe,
we can do for you as well, go ahead, Tracy.
Joe, I wanted to say, so one of the things we came up with when we first started this organization is a tagline called "We Are Their Voice." You probably see that all the time in our Facebook page. It's because when you lose a loved one, you know, the families left become their voice.
Yeah.
Or for the voices.
My group is at Williams Deloach, and my nursing home work is victims to victors. So you know, we don't want, when people come to me, what our goal is that they come in a victim, they leave a victor. You know, they change the way that future people are going to be treated. That's part of the deal, is that you become a part of this spoke of change where meaning can be given. And it never makes it easier to lose a loved one. Like, you know, look, you guys lost your loved ones, and that's never, that hole is going to always be there. But there is something really beautiful about taking in their memory and saying, I'm gonna make sure that someone, maybe not everyone, but someone is going to avoid what we've gone through because of your memory. That is such a beautiful paying forward of things. You're taking this horrible event and you're converting it into a legacy that really, I mean, this is what life's about. That's what it's about to live. Yeah.
Well, again, I thank you, Joe, and
thank you, ladies. It's
we
been an honor.
definitely will be in touch with you. And for all of those who are going to be looking at this podcast, please make sure that you really pay attention to what was said, because it's not, like Joe said, it is not just all bad news. It's just putting out there exactly what the real deal is, and that you have options and you have support, and there are ways in which you can find the tools in order to navigate through whatever situation that you are navigating through at the moment. So don't be despaired, but have hope and know that we at Justice and Change are here for you. We're here to support you. Just reach out to us. We have our Facebook page, and you can reach us at jc4nfvictims@gmail.com. And so with that being said, we just like to close our podcast now, thanking Joe again for being with us.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Joe.
It's
yes,
been
that
an
was
absolute
wonderful.
honor. An absolute
Okay.
honor. Thank you so much, all of you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.